Good morning all. Myself Pravitha Vijayan, pursuing MSc Microbiology from Central University of Tamil Nadu. I'm going to talk about the topic Coral Microbial Association. First, I will talk about the corals and their importance. Corals are most diverse ecosystem in the world and millions of people depends on the corals for their food, protection and job. Corals comes under the phylum Cnidaria and class Anthozoa. They are marine invertebrates and they are classified into two that are soft corals and stony corals. It depends upon their ability to produce calcium carbonate. The stony corals have the ability to produce calcium carbonate while the soft corals didn't. A coral is made up of individual animals called polyps. These polyps are linked to one another. So any stress get by one of the member or one of the community in corals, it will impact the other members also. And the polyp have an opening at one of their end is called as mouth, and this is surrounded by a structure called tentacle. And through this mouth, through this opening called mouth, they get food, and after consumption they release their waste products through the same opening. And as like in rhizosphere of plants, like we all know that the rhizosphere of plants contain more microbiomes than the other part of the plants because of the production of some organic molecule by the plant and release into the rhizosphere region. So like that, in the case of corals also, the surrounding region have more microbiome because of the production of organic compounds by the corals. And the coral associated microbial community, as like in human microbiome, shift in between the healthy and disease. Coral reefs are most diverse and valuable ecosystem in the world. They provide food to the coastal and inland communities, and they also support the jobs and businesses through recreational activities and tourism. They are important to the cultural heritage, beliefs, tradition and customs of coastal communities, and they protect the shoreline by reducing the impact from waves, floods and storms. We all know that humans are living in close association with a human microbiome, right? Like that, corals have their own microbiome. They are close association with this microbiome, like algae, bacteria, fungi, and even parasites and viruses. Just like humans, they also differ their microbial composition on different parts of their body, and they differ in their function also. That is, those living in the coral skeleton provide a different function to those that inhabit a coral gut or outer epidermal layer. I already mentioned corals are marine invertebrates, and most of the corals have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria, fungi, and archaea. And the close associated microorganisms of corals is called as holobiont, and there is an important theory called holobiont theory. What the theory suggests that rapid adaptation of coral to pathogen is influenced by changes in the associated microbiota. What does it mean? The composition of microbiome can affect its ability to resist and recover from the infections. And corals have a diverse range of microorganisms, and each of them have specific ecological functions also. They help in their coral, in the coral survival and health, and also they help in nutrient cycling, coral health and reef resilience. As I already mentioned in the previous slide, there are many bacteria, archaea and fungi are closely or symbiotically associated with the corals, and they have a specific ecological functions. Here I show the bacteria mainly have nitrogen, sulfur and phosphorus nutrient cycling as a major function, and the archaea have a function to maintain the coral health through chemical defense, and the fungi is mainly helping for the coral reef resilience. Symbionts are one of the association of microbes with corals, and Zooxanthellae is a classical example for symbiotic relationship. Zooxanthellae is an endosymbiotic dinoflagellates, comes under the genus Symbiodinium, and I already mentioned is a classical example of a symbiotic relationship, right? So the in a symbiotic relationship, all we know that the both partners get benefited. Here, microbe that is Zooxanthellae and coral are the two partners. So both of them must get benefited. The corals that give carbon dioxide and water to the zooxanthellae. We all know that it's a requirement for the photosynthesis process, and the zooxanthellae undergo photosynthesis and it gives back oxygen and building blocks of sugar and protein to the corals, and also they help in the removal of waste material from the corals. And I already mentioned it's a classical example because once the corals get physically stressed, the polyps get expels the zooxanthellae, and the colony takes on a stalk white appearance. This is a specific condition called coral bleaching. It's a critical condition in which if the coral go for too long without the things or without the nutrients that given by the zooxanthellae, it will undergo starvation. And next is bacteria. Many of the bacteria have a symbiotic relationship with the corals. The corals provide three general habitats for the bacteria to reside, that are the surface mucus layer, coral tissue, and the calcium carbonate skeleton. There is a coral called Oculina patagonica, in which they reside some cyanobacteria. They provide photoassimilates to the coral tissue. I already mentioned in the previous slide there is a disease called coral bleaching occur in the coral that may lead to death of the corals. And once they get they need some nutrients that normally given by zooxanthellae to recover this condition. In the case of Oculina patagonica, the cyanobacteria provide some photoassimilate that helps to recover this condition called coral bleaching. And the bacterial community will differ according to the depth, environment, and the physiology of the coral. There are many bacteria community are there in association with the corals. The mainly are proteobacteria and gamma proteobacteria are found in coral associated community. This is some of the examples of bacteria having symbiotic relationship with the corals, and first is the symbiodinium association. I pasted a picture here. This show the symbiodinium association, and it is a bacteria. While technically it's a dinoflagellates, and they have a most well-known coral symbiont, and which provides nutrients to the coral through the process of photosynthesis. Next is a Vibrio species. They help in nutrient cycling, nitrogen fixation, and antimicrobial defense. The pseudo-ultramonas species also have a symbiotic relationship with the corals, and they produce some antimicrobial compounds. These compounds helps the corals by protecting them from some of the pathogens that infect them. And the last one is Endozoicomonas species. They help the corals by playing a role in nutrient acquisition and host metabolism. In this slide, I am going to talk about the archaea and viruses having symbiotic relationship with the corals. Archaea mainly get it from the mucus sample and tissue sample, and the mucus sample were dominated by euryarchaeotes and the tissue sample is by crenarchaeotes. Unlike zooxanthellae and bacteriae, there is no evidence of species-specific association between corals and archaea. The coral Diploria strigosa, they had no archaea association in common. There is an example, Methanosarcina species. This archaea found in association with coral, and they play a role in methane cycling. Coming to viruses, viruses are common components of the coral reef environment, and virus-like particles is present in the water above the corals. And this particle abundance is significantly higher in the surfaces of the corals. And most of the coral reef associated viruses are phages. Coming to the last category of microorganisms that have a symbiotic relationship with the coral, that is fungi. Fungi is considered as a pathogen in the case of coral association, and the recent investigation proposed that some fungal groups are potentially beneficial to the corals. And the coral Porites asteroides, the metagenomic study shows that fungus were predominantly found in their holobiont. And the predominant members of this holobiont is the fungal phyla Ascomycota, Basidiomycota, and Chytridiomycota. Among them, the Ascomycota as the dominant phylum. And the community associated with the coral Acropora hyacinthus show the presence of diverse metabolically active fungal communities. And there is an example Aspergillus species. The species helps in the nutrient cycling and decomposition. Next is the parasitic association between the microbes and corals. All we know that it's a biological association where one of the organism get benefited at the expense of the other, that is the host. And when the parasitic relationship establishes, it may lead to some of the diseases and the loss of coral health. And algae is the first organism I'm going to talk about, it having a parasitic relationship with the coral. And there is two categories of algae, mainly they have the parasitic relationship with coral, that is dinoflagellates and brown algae. The dinoflagellates, Carenia brevis and Gambia discus toxicus, both of them produce some toxin compounds when they grow, and it may lead to tissue degradation and death of the coral. And the brown algae Dictyota species, they shade the coral from the light and compete with the coral for nutrients. And there is a table that showing diseases that caused by bacterial and fungal pathogen that live as a parasite early in coral and specific coral host. Among them, the Vibrio bacteria is the main one causing diseases. That is the Vibrio bacteria that causes bleaching diseases, white plague diseases, white band diseases, and yellow blotch diseases. And the Aspergillus is the only fungal that known live as a parasite in coral and cause aspergillosis disease. And Ornithomonas coralicida is a bacteria that causes white plague disease. And Thalassomonas loyana, this is also a bacteria that lead to white plague disease. And Serratia marcescens cause whitepox, and Consortium that cause black band disease. The last association I am going to talk about is commensal. Commensal is a biological association where one of the organism get benefits while the other is neither harmed nor benefited. Algae, bacteria and archaea are the three categories of organism that live as a commensal in coral. They get mainly the habitat and nutrients from the coral, and the coral is neither harmed and nor benefited by them. The algae diatom is the main one that live as a commensal in coral. And in the case of bacteria, it is Micrococcus species, and in archaea, the methanogens are live as a commensal in coral. These are my references. Thank you.